All right, so I want to talk to you a little briefly, hand you over to our speakers, but let me just let you know a little bit about them before we start. So today, we are very happy to be joined once again by the Human Resource Management Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and or, as we are very familiar with the term HUMAT, they're fondly known as HUMAT. And we have with us today Miss Corinne Copeland and Miss Amanda Lewis. Now, if some of you may or may not be too familiar about who or what HUMAT is the leading voice of the human resource profession locally. HUMAT also provides education and information services, conferences, seminars, and online services to thousands of professionals and students throughout Trinidad and Tobago. The association was formed by human resource practitioners in Trinidad and Tobago to share ideas as well as experiences and to engage in professional stimulation and development. The session today by Humat is called Creating a Winning Resume. So let's get started. And I'm going to hand you over now to Miss Amanda Lewis and Corinne Copeland. And I think Amanda is going to start and Corinne will follow. So thanks very much again, guys. And we look forward to a really good session. You guys are really busy and we really, really appreciate you being with us today for the very first resume writing for this academic year. Thanks, guys. Amanda.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. All right, guys, good afternoon and welcome to our session this afternoon. So before we get into the meat of it, I'm sure you may be familiar with the popular show What You Know Trinidad, right? And it's basically education through entertainment. Resume writing is basically an entire course. I think it should be a course, a 2-year course given, the way that we need to craft an effective resume to gain employment right now, right? So before we even get into the presentation, I want to ask you all some questions. I want to find out what you know. And this is, of course, to dispel some myths that we may have about resume writing. So I'll ask my friend Chanel to just help me queue up a poll, right? And we're going to ask 3 questions, answer based on what you know about resume writing. The first question is, what is the purpose of a resume? Multiple choice, just tell me, what is the purpose of a resume? The second question, what is the difference between a resume and a CV? Yeah, I'm sure you may see it used interchangeably in ads and whatnot. So you want to get familiar with that. And the last question, what is an acceptable length for a resume? A very pertinent question that we get all the time. So I'm seeing the scores coming in. Keep voting, guys. Let me see what you know. Yeah, and let's see how we can assess the status of resume writing or how much you know on resume writing as we go along in the presentation. So keep voting. I'm seeing the answers coming in here. Good, good. Yes, I'm seeing some interesting answers. Interesting answers. Keep going, guys. Purpose of a resume. What is the difference between a resume and a CV? And of course, the length of a resume. Things that you will need to know when you're finished, when you graduate, and you are now crafting your resume or editing your resume to send in an application. So let's see. Yes. So we are seeing the results coming in now. What is the purpose of a resume? To get an interview, and that is quite right. The purpose of a resume is to get an interview. You cannot get a job automatically with the resume, right? So quite correct. Second question, what is the difference between a resume and a CV? Let's see, all of the above, perfect. It differs in its length, the content, what information goes in there, and of course the purpose, so excellent. What is an acceptable length of a resume? So I'm seeing what is the highest score here. So we have a tie between 1 page and 2 pages, which is interesting because what we are looking for, it really depends on your experience. And why we say this, of course, as a graduate, if you don't have much work experience, your resume may tend to be 1 page. But when you get more experience, it's impossible to fit everything on 1 page. So do not be trapped or feel restricted by this 1 page rule when the answer is it really depends on your experience. Yeah, and of course, the experience needs to be relevant to the job that you're applying for. So thanks so much, Chanel, for helping me with this poll. What do you know? So you guys know a lot, right? Let's get into it. So let us look at the agenda for this evening. Components of a resume. What goes into a resume? Tailoring your resume for the job. 1 second, let me just go back a slide here. Technology again. Resume do's and don'ts, and of course, other concerns that you may have, concerns that we get a lot in the HR field, in the career development field. And to the end, of course, you're free to ask all your questions. Yeah, so let's go on to the components of a resume on the next slide. First, your name and contact information, very, very important. The thing about it, I see resumes still to this day with the name in the small font, almost in the same font size as your contact information and your email address, etc. You want to have your name as the biggest font on the document. It's very important. And then, of course, your phone number and your email address would come after. Some persons like put their LinkedIn profile there under contact information. That is fine as well, but your name should be bold, it should stand out the most. Another point to note is you should not put your contact information in the header section of your resume. And when I say header, when you're using Microsoft Word, of course, and you put all the information up there, please don't, because what it does, remember when you're printing this, it might get lost, it might get jumbled, and you want to make sure that that is the prominent thing on your resume. Who is this resume coming from? Your name and your contact information. Important too, to also have this information on every page, right? So it's okay to put it as your footer, right? After your page number, name and contact information. Again, for the sake of HR officers and whoever is screening your resume, they want to, in case it's mixed up in printing or whatnot, you want to have all your information there so it's easy to put together. Yeah? Profile summary and objective. We're gonna get into this in more detail. The profile summary and objective is the second main component on your resume. And what it does is tell a story of what it is you're about, what it is you have to offer. But there's a unique difference, and we'll get into that in the following slides. Yeah? Your skills section. Important point to note, there's a difference between hard skills and soft skills. Your hard skills are any sort of technical skills that you have, that of course is learned, right? Your soft skills are things that's natural to you. It's your innate ability to do certain things. So communication, you can communicate well, right? You work well in teams, that's your natural ability. But in terms of a hard skill, for example, if you think about unique computer software knowledge, this is something that you will have to learn, and that's why it's called a hard skill. Moving on to your work or volunteer experience. Graduates, even though you would have been doing your degree for 3-4 years, depending on the nature of your degree, it's important to seek volunteer opportunities, especially if you have not done any work during your July, August break, right? Semester break. Employers want to see that you are well-rounded and that you have something to complement your education, your academic side. So even if you do not have work experience, it's very important to volunteer. They could still ascertain from your volunteer experience that you have been practicing, yeah, what you have learned, that you give back, that you have the ability to perform or do the skill that you state you have. I'll move on to 5, education. Well, of course, this is a given. Corinne will talk a bit about it later, but my rule of thumb is once you have a degree, as in you graduate, you have your degree, you do not need to include A levels and CXC passes on your resume, because your degree would of course state or indicate that you would have passed through that level, yeah, to get the degree. So again, we'll talk a little bit about this later on, but point to note, your education is important. And as a graduate as well, if it is you do not have any work experience, your education goes before, right? You have volunteer experience, you put your education before your volunteer experience. Recommendation, again, something that is really a hard or a sore point, because if you think about it, it's fine to have recommendations on your resume, yes, but you have to ensure, are you keeping up with these persons and you're telling them, hello, I put you on my resume as a reference, yeah? So I apply for some jobs if they call you XYZ. If you guys are not doing that, please start to do that, because you do not want for your reference to be called and they are unaware, they're caught off guard, and so this will impact the whatever their referral, your referral, right? So let's get into the other slide and the meat of things. We're going to discuss profile summary and objective statement. The objective statement really discusses what you want, you as the employee, potential employee, you as the job seeker rather. And the profile summary emphasizes what the employer's needs are and focuses on what you can bring to the table. So I'll repeat that. Objective statement focuses on your wants, the job seeker's wants, and your profile summary, sometimes called professional summary, emphasizes the employer's needs and focuses on what you, the job seeker, can bring to the table. So let's get a little bit into this definition in the next slide. Perfect. So objective statement, you see a little image about it's all about me, right? It's a short statement which describes your goals and your desire for employment. It sounds okay, right? Before I get into the example, what it really does is just state you are looking for a job. Yeah, it does not really sell or create that buy-in for an employer. So let's look at this example. To obtain a position where I can use my organizational, communication, and time management skills. If we were to critique this, guys, to obtain a position, of course you want to obtain a position. Of course you want to gain employment, right? So far, that's your want, where I could use my organizational, communication, and time management skills. In this statement here, the employer sees nothing that they can use that convinces them you are worthy for an interview. You are worthy to, get to know a little bit more. It says nothing to them. And so this is why we encourage persons writing a resume to now frame or reframe rather an objective statement into a profile summary. Let's see the example on the next slide. Perfect. So to go back one, yes, perfect. The profile summary, statement on your experience and knowledge, and it highlights why you are the right fit. So they want to get to know you, right? They don't want to know generic skills as in you have communication and time management. They want to get to know you. What have you done? What have you created? So let's look at this example. This is a profile summary for administrative professional, yeah? Versatile and reliable administrative professional with 4 years of experience. supporting executives, sales personnel, and managers to improve business operations. What this does, it's very specific to the needs. You could tell that this person has tailored it to mirror almost what is on the job ad. And it creates a sense of potential fit for the employer. They would want to know, who is this person? I want to call them in for an interview. Let's see if they are right fit. Yeah. Let's move to the next slide, please. Now, recruiters, HR officers, HR managers generally will prefer the profile summary, right? Because it tells a picture of what the person can offer, the job seeker can offer. However, the objective statement is acceptable if you are a recent graduate, if you are an entry-level job seeker, and if you are a job seeker looking to transition in another career. Now, this but there's still something to observe here. Yes, the objective statement is acceptable, but it would not be something generic as to provide a position, to obtain rather a position where I could use my communication skills. No. You will state your objective because you are seeking something. You may have lack experience, recent graduate, etc. But you still create a story, a brand story of yourself. You're still telling them what are your strengths, right? What have you majored in? Perhaps you majored in business management, you majored in technical engineering, right? Whatever is your major, you put it in, especially for recent graduates, you put it in your objective statement. So it's not just about what you want, but it also tells about you and what you can offer. So here we want to discuss how you tailor your resume for the job. No more generic resumes, no more sending the same resume to several organizations and sitting back waiting to be called. I'm going to invite my colleague Corinne to explain what employers look for in a tailored or a targeted resume. And she will use an example here. This is a HSEQ advisor position and how you really pull out the information from the job description. Corinne?
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Amanda. So on the screen, we have an actual advertisement that was used to advertise for a role of HSEQ advisor. Now, the reason why I like to refer to this particular ad when I'm doing these types of presentations is because we actually had more persons applying for this one vacancy than we have persons scheduled and logged into this call today. We had close to 300 applicants applying for this. So could you imagine the type of competition that you are dealing with for this one job? And of course, being in the HR department at the time, I was actually responsible for having to sift through those 300 plus applications. Now, very often we hear things like HR officers and HR people only spend a little while looking at a resume before they move on. So how am I expected to get a chance? But that, as hard as it may be to hear, is in fact the reality. And I want to tell you all that. We spend not even minutes sometimes on a resume. We spend mere seconds on a resume before deciding to put it either in the I'll come back to pile or next opportunity for you, good luck with your next application pile, as in I'm not coming back to you. All right, so which is why it's very, very important that you make your resume stand out from just the ordinary application that we get on a day-to-day basis. And one of the ways to do that is to tailor your resume for the specific advertisement. So Amanda said there is no one size fits all resume. And that is very, very true. Every job that you apply for should present you via a different resume. The core of it, of course, remains the same because at the end of the day, you are who you are and your brand is your brand. but you need to market and sell your skills and your competence and your experience in alignment with what the organization and the company is looking for. And that data is presented in the ad. So whenever you all see an ad in the newspaper or online or wherever, my advice to you is pay particular attention to the contents of that when you're doing your resume, and try to answer the questions that the employer is asking you. And I'll give you an example. So in this particular ad that you're seeing, this company is looking for certain attributes from the ideal candidate. They want someone who is customer service oriented, who has excellent interpersonal skills, who has strong organizational skills. So even though you may not have had experience working in an organization, when you see something like strong organizational skills and the ability to manage multiple priorities, you can reflect on your volunteer activities. You can reflect even on the projects that you participated in at school, whether it be team projects or whatever, and use that to market yourself with what the organization is asking. So I'll give you an example. Customer service mindset. If, for example, you volunteered maybe in your library, you may have had a part-time job working in a store, you can highlight all those things as part of your customer service role. You can highlight your experience working with your fellow teammates on a project and what your role on that project would have been, to show maybe not just your leadership, if you held a leadership role, but to also show your time management and your team working skills. All right. So it's always advisable that you pay particular attention, not just to, okay, they're asking for an HSE person, I think I can do this, but how do I market myself and convince them through selling the experience that I have that I can in fact do this job. All right. And I do in fact have what we call transferable skills. And transferable skills, for those of you who don't know, are skills outside of the workplace that can very well be transferred to be as effective in the workplace. And by that, I gave you examples of your projects in school, assignments that you would have led, and team projects you would have led, things you would have volunteered on, and the particular role that you held, whether it was to proofread somebody else's document. I mean, for somebody to ask you to proofread a document, you have to have some kind of attention to detail, because not a lot of people have that. And when you look at the particular ad, it is asking for someone who has a keen attention to detail. So pay particular attention to it and try to ask yourself, what transferable skills do I have that I am able to share with this employer so that they can feel that I can apply these skills to the job and be an effective employee based on what they're asking for. All right. So as I said, ask yourself, what can I offer the company, and how are my experiences, whether in the workplace or out of the workplace, relevant? And do I have examples to demonstrate them? And I repeat again, your examples don't always have to be work related. A lot of young people think that because I don't have the experience, I don't stand a chance. Dig deeper within yourself. And if you have not started volunteering, I will make a plug for it now, and I'm sure Amanda will make a plug for it when she comes back on. Get yourself involved. There are a lot of opportunities for you to volunteer, whether it be on campus, or there are a lot of professional associations like HERMAT that also look for volunteers to serve on various committees. That provides tremendous benefits. You have an opportunity to expand your network. You have an opportunity to build your skills. It is invaluable. All right. And of course, use that to show the employer how you are able to achieve the results that they are looking for. All right. So the next thing that I want to speak to you a little bit about are some common resume mistakes. And at this point during this segment, I will ask my colleague to also share from her experiences, because she spends a lot of time supporting and reviewing resumes for young people as a career counselor. All right. So certainly from an HR perspective, one of the common mistakes that I see before I even get to the personal details, come from how people present themselves in the first place. We are in the age of technology, all right? So very limited. You see companies placing ad in papers and asking people to drop in a resume. Most of it is done online. Before COVID, and more so now because of COVID, and everybody is trying to go electronic and contactless. All right. So I advise people, please pay attention to your email address. It is your first introduction to your prospective employer. I have seen email addresses that some of them I can't even repeat. I just look at it and I'm like, what? So I'll give you some examples. Tall man, 24, Coco, that Trini girl. Ladies and gentlemen, no. Stick to combinations of your first name and your last name as a rule of thumb. All right. If you need to add a number to it, because some of us have very common names and sometimes you try to open a Gmail account and you're told that the account already exists, and that is normal. Then you can add a number to it that will distinguish yourself from other people with the same Gmail account. But please pay attention to your email address because that's the first thing the employer sees that is representative of you. All right. Amanda mentioned a little bit earlier on about your personal details. Very often we see persons sending in their resume, listing their date of birth, their marital status, their religion, how many kids they have. TMI, as young people say, is too much information. All right. My advice to you guys is leave some intrigue. Let the employer want to know more about you. And that's what the interview process is for. All right. Stick to the basics. Provide your name, provide your address, provide your contact information, be it your email address, a cell phone contact, or maybe one or two contact numbers. In this day and age, I know people have 2 and 3 cell phones and a landline. You can provide a couple of contact numbers. You can also provide a link to your social media page as a means of contacting you. And on that note, I would caution you as well about the use of social media and linking your CV to your social media pages, because sometimes a lot of persons are not discreet about what they post on social media. It's the reality. We see a lot of scandals out there from persons of all different ages. So it's not just limited to young persons, or adults of more senior age also make the same mistake. When you put something out on the web, it stays there forever. You think that you can take it down, but all it takes is one person to see that and share it before you have taken it down, and it becomes uncontrollable. All right. So when you're linking your resume to your social media presence, make sure that you have a professional presence and one that will not make you feel ashamed if someone were to Google your name or to check your Facebook page and come across photos or even blogs that you may have written or articles that you may have posted. Yeah. Try to keep it professional. I tell people there's no such thing as exclusively a private life and a right to do what I want in my private space and a professional life. At the end of the day, you're up and coming professionals, and it is one life. You are represented by what you do, what you say, regardless of which sphere you think that you're saying it in. All right. So takes me to point number 2, job responsibilities instead of accomplishments. Some persons have work experience, and what they do is copy their job description into their resume and think that that is acceptable to sell themselves. Really and truly, it doesn't. What it does is it tells me what the employer expected you to do, but not necessarily what you have done in your experience. All right. So it's advisable to use action verbs. This is why I speak about action verbs. So instead of just copying your job responsibilities, which may say to foster an open environment or to assist the line manager with preparation of documents, actually say things that you have done. Prepared, and notice I said prepared because action verbs normally are past tense words. All right, they normally end with ed. So prepared correspondence on behalf of the office manager. All right, assisted the manager in executing a large corporate event. All right, try to use action verbs and verbs that demonstrate what you have done as opposed to what you were supposed to do theoretically. And I spoke about the wrong tense. The action verbs are always in past and not the present tense. All right, try to keep it brief. Avoid the wordy and too lengthy resumes. Amanda spoke earlier on about the length of a resume, and she was spot on. It really does depend on your level of experience and where you are at in your professional life. But even in terms of persons who are more accomplished and have years of experience, my advice for them is always, your resume doesn't have to be 5 and 6 pages long either. Because when you get to a certain point in your career, it's acceptable to leave out the entry level experience that you may have had. And I do it myself. You know, when I'm applying for an HR job at my level, I don't go back to the days when I used to work in finance. That's irrelevant. It has no bearing on my HR career today. Of course, it may come up in an interview, and this is where I remind you guys of leaving some intrigue. At the end of the day, you want to sell yourself enough for someone to be interested and to call you to get to know more about you. All right? So pay attention to the length of your resume. Pay attention to the template. There are a lot of fancy templates out there, and I will not be one to stifle anybody's creativity, but we have to be mindful of going overboard. All right? Unless you're applying for a job in a creative industry, I would advise you to stay away from the colored and the scented paper, stay away from the pretty background graphics, stay away from the fancy fonts, try to keep it professional. I remember once in a prior session, someone asked whether it's okay to use a chart or two. It is acceptable. The rule of thumb is don't go overboard, all right? When you are also preparing your resume, it is crucial and very, very important to proofread, and proofread it again. And if you are not one who is very attentive to detail, then ask someone to do it for you, or go to professionals like Amanda and pay a small fee to have your resume reviewed so that you can eliminate the risk of submitting something that is laden with errors. And I have, as an HR professional, I have seen lots of resumes come before me with poor grammar, incorrect spelling, the justification on the page is all over. What it does is it demonstrates that you're not yet ready for the world of work. And it also demonstrates upfront that you're not attentive to detail. So if I were recruiting for that HSEQ advisor role that asks for someone who's attentive to detail, and the first thing I get, and I'm reading a cover letter that is laden with errors, where do you think your resume is going to go? In the I'll come back to you later pile, or in the hell no pile? All right. Amanda spoke about the name and contact information missing on subsequent pages. It's important to make sure that you have that information accessible, because of course you don't want the employer having any reason to not be able to contact you if they're interested. All right. But again, it doesn't have to be prominent on every page. You can put it on the first page and then just keep it at the bottom of every other page. Yeah. Amanda, you want to add anything at this point?
Yes, thanks for asking. I was giggling because
Yeah, I saw you.
let me touch on the template first thing. There's the misconception that because you're talking about personal branding and resume is a personal brand tool, that you need to stand out and be bold and have these loud colors. And when we get down into it, guys, you have to remember that it's your content, it's your actual skills that is going to determine whether the employer calls you. It has nothing to do with how fancy or how sweet your resume smells. And so don't be fooled by that. Don't get tied up in that misconception, right? Yes, you can use a pop of color. And when I say a pop, still it has to be conservative colors. So I normally say, what would you normally go to an interview with? What color? You will stick to navy blue, gray, etc. That's if it is you want to use color. I say you could feel free to do so. Use the color in the headings. So work experience will be a heading, education is a heading, skills section is a heading, yeah, but you're not using color everywhere and including all these fancy infographics and whatnot. Just be careful. And what we should have mentioned before too, remember we are in this space, we are in Trinidad and Tobago. A lot of the conventions that govern resume writing that's online, we take it from the US, the UK, and whatnot, and it doesn't really apply to us here. So, the fancy resume with the template might be awesome in American culture because they are a bit more liberal and but if you're applying to, let's say, in medical field or a ministry job or whatnot, depending on who is looking at your resume, they're going to be like, what is this? What, and I'm telling you from what has been told to me, right? What is this? Oh, another young person, they like this fancy thing. And then you go to the content and it's poor. It doesn't really reflect your ability. So just be mindful of that. Another thing I wanted to mention to Corinne talk about it is having a sense of pride in your resume, besides the email address that you're using to send. I remembered I placed a vacancy on Facebook and someone responded to my email by writing their resume on a sheet of paper and she took a picture and sent it to my email. And I was floored because I had to, at that point, it was the two different hats coming in, the recruiter hat and the career counselor. So I told her, listen, this is not going to stand. You need to type it up. You need to find somewhere. She explained that she didn't have a computer at the time and whatnot. Still, find someone who can help, guys, because we have moved so much in terms of technology, and just having access to a computer or to a friend to help you out and even send it on your behalf. Please, if you have a phone, you have access to Wi-Fi data, ask someone, send that same picture to a friend and let they type it up in a Word document and send your resume. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of mention these things to have pride in your document, but be mindful that we're living in Trinidad and Tobago. If you're applying for a job here, there are certain things that you need to consider.
There are two other things in particular I want to mention to you guys as well, certainly from an HR perspective. There sometimes is a tendency to, I like to use the word embellish things that are on your resume. I have had experiences of persons putting academic qualifications that they actually have not attained, thinking that an employer will not check. All right, when you submit your resume for an application for a job, you have to think that I'm going to land this job. And as normal parts of a recruitment process is something we call reference and background checks. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think we make the mistake of thinking that a reference check means that I will only call the persons, or they will only call the persons that I put on my resume to verify or to ask about me. That is an incorrect assumption to make, and I want you all to understand that. Because I can share a story with you of coincidentally hiring an HSC advisor in a particular organization. And as part of our process, we do thorough reference and background checks. We even do financial background checks on persons. And he was hired because there was an urgency in the need for him to start immediately. So he was hired subject to satisfactory reference and background checks. So of course, after he started, we conducted our checks. We called educational institutions to verify his academic qualifications, only for one of them to advise that they have never heard of this particular person, have no record of him ever having attended the school, much less to have attained a particular degree from the school. Needless to say, I called him into my office. We had one conversation and he tendered his resignation forthwith because he knew that what he submitted was not just a lie, but it was fraudulent. He was fraudulently representing information from a school that was incorrect. So that has even further reaching consequences if an organization decides to pursue it than you just being fired probably from the job or not getting the job in the first place. All right, so be truthful. The next thing that I want to speak about, as I mentioned very briefly, has to do with whether or not to include references on my resume. That is often a dilemma. Some people think that I should only put it if they ask for it. Some people think that I should put it nonetheless. I have my personal opinion on it, but I'll tell you honestly, there is no employer that will eliminate your application for putting references on there or not putting references on there. My guidance to you though, is that if the ad specifically asks you to include it, please include it. Don't take it upon yourself to not include it, because I have seen advertisements that ask people to submit their CV and 3 references or 2 references, as the case may be. Comply with whatever the ad has asked you to do. If the ad is silent on it, then you can make a judgment call as to whether or not you want to include it or not. That is entirely up to you. What I will say, and Amanda spoke about it, is ensure that if you list persons on your resume as references, that those persons are aware and those persons are willing to give positive feedback on you. Because again, I can share my war stories. I've had instances when going to hire persons, they've passed all the stages in the process, come to the reference check now, and I call someone they listed on their resume, not even someone that I took it upon myself to find out about, someone they listed, and the person did not give positive feedback. You and that person may have had a falling out. Please make sure that you seek approval from your references to use them as references. All right, and make sure that they can speak well of you. It will not help you if they can't do that. All right. Anything else you want to share, Amanda, before we transition?
No, yeah, we could go ahead.
Great. So I know we spoke a lot about some of these things in terms of making your resume stand out. We spoke about the social media account and adding them to it. That certainly is a more modern touch to resumes. Another thing too is quantifying your achievements, which we didn't talk about. And this is often very easier for persons who have experience, all right? So those of you who don't have experience, don't feel bad about not being able to do that. Just remember what I said, to use action verbs and use your experiences outside of the world of work as well. But for those of you who do have professional experience, especially if you have several years experience, then it's advisable that you quantify your achievements. So if, for example, you were responsible for, let's say, leading a particular project that was supposed to result in some sort of improvements in the organization, then you can say something like led cost improvement project that resulted in 15% improvement on whatever it is you were supposed to improve, all right? If you introduced some sort of initiative that resulted in process efficiency, then you can say specifically that you introduced a database that resulted in a reduction in time to enter information by 20% for representatives. I'm making it up on the spot, but I hope you all get my point. All right, try your best to quantify and measure your achievements as much as you can, and make sure that you use action verbs as much as you can. Amanda?
Yes, I will just chime in here on just the social media accounts. You mentioned it before, but what I would like to it's not only about your photos and your blogs and whatnot. What's also is important is your comments, guys.
Mhm.
I see it a lot when you comment on a post, let's say a vacancy post. I have seen persons mention, huh, $5,000 for XYZ position, and they would say something they'll make a smirk, a remark that is very unpolished for a professional who is job seeking. And I'm saying that you have to be very wary of your interaction on Facebook or anywhere else because you never know who can see it. You know for yourself, guys, that for anything you look through comments. You look through comments for any post. You want to see who have the same thought process as you, etc. So when you are commenting on these things, be very mindful on what you say because that would weigh on how a recruiter or anyone who is managing that vacancy post, it will weigh on how they look at you, especially if you still send in an application, right? Just be careful on that. The branding statement, as graduates, and especially if you have no work experience, it's okay to say aspiring, we're talking about HSC, aspiring HSC advisor, aspiring social worker, right? Because you are working towards that. And of course, whatever your degree was, it will tell, this is the direction, this is your career path. So you could have that as your branding statement. And I will say include it, especially if you're applying for a job in that field, right? It adds a little more zest, for lack of a better word right now, to your resume, a bit of personality, a bit of your brand. Yeah, so those are the two things that I just wanted to chime in on for you.
Great. So there are some other areas that people ask us usually to comment on. And one of them are employment gaps. So again, my advice here goes back to the advice that I gave before, which is about honesty. All right. If you are a professional and let's say for one reason or another, you have a gap in your resume, as in a period of time that you've not worked, don't try to hide it. And when you get called for an interview, try your best to be honest without getting too personal, but be honest, because there are several and numerous reasons why people will have gaps in their resume. And certainly, if I'm looking at a resume, I will notice it. And what I will do is I will make a mark so that when I do interview that person, I remember to ask why. But it's not something that would eliminate you from being shortlisted in the first place. And I'll share with you my personal story. So I've been in the world of work for 20 plus years. And there came a point in time in my life when I decided that I didn't want to just focus solely on my career because I was very much career oriented, in my younger days. Nothing else. I had blinders on, just focused on my career. And I wanted to get to a particular point by a particular age and achieve things by a particular age. And so I neglected certain aspects of my personal life. So of course, I'm sure there are females logged into this call. And, as women, we get older and that maternal instinct kicks in and we decide, okay, I don't want to get too old. And then some doctor tells me that I can no longer have children. So it came that point for me. And I decided, okay, it's that time. I need to, just create a better balance because I will admit that there wasn't such a balance. And so when I had my son, I decided to take a year off from my career. So anybody looking at my resume now will see a gap for an entire year. As a matter of fact, it was 15 months to be exact, a 15-month gap. And that was a personal choice because I wanted to bond with my baby. I wanted to breastfeed. I did not want to have the challenges of breastfeeding and working and managing a demanding job at that time. So I took that personal decision. And so when I get asked about it in interviews, it's a very easy story for me to tell because it's my story. All right. And that's another thing that I want to tell you guys. Don't ever be ashamed to tell your story. It represents who you are, it represents what you stand for, and it represents the things that are important to you in your life. all right? So in treating with gaps in your employment, never be ashamed, be honest. When it comes to job hopping, that one is not so easily viewed upon as the employment gaps. So very often you look at resumes and you see persons hopping and not staying with a particular place of employment for very long. Sometimes it's less than a year, sometimes it's every year. And you ask yourself as a recruiter, if I hire this person, how long will he or she stay with me before he jumps again? I wonder what's happening here. You know, and sometimes if I see, for example, contract in brackets, well, then it provides some sort of explanation for me as to maybe why the tenure was so short. Because then the person has told me in brackets, so they would have the position and the organization, and then they would have contract in brackets, and they would have told me that that was a contract opportunity. So obviously, if that contract is not renewed, they have to move on. So those are a little more explainable. But the ones where we can't stick it out for one reason or another, and people come up with all sorts of stories as they don't like their boss, they didn't get along well with a co-worker, all sorts of stories. The new buzzword in organizations these days is called resilience. All right. Companies are going through a lot, especially now in this challenging environment, not just because of COVID, but all the challenges that COVID has brought to organizations and will continue to bring for the next couple of months or maybe even the next year, because we have no idea when we're going to get a vaccine and return to what we know or what we knew as normal. All right. So we consider this environment the new normal, and organizations are going to be looking for candidates who are strong, candidates who are resilient, and candidates who can, quote unquote, handle some pressure, because it's not easy. Professional life is not easy, and it's not easy working and trying to balance all the other aspects of your life. All right. So I always advise young and upcoming professionals, unless someone is harassing you and the work environment is so untenable that your health is being jeopardized, try and stick it out. There is always some positive aspect that you're going to glean from it. You know, there's a saying, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. I firmly believe in it. I firmly do believe in it. And if you're spiritual, as I am, I always say, Lord, you know why I'm here. I may not see the reason now, but I trust you. Stick it out. All right. Typically, anything around two years is acceptable. When you're jumping too much within that 1 to 2 year time frame, employers kind of, you know, take a dim view on it. All right. Incomplete schooling. Similarly, I mean, I link that to the first point that I mentioned. For one reason or another, if you didn't complete a certain course, or if you didn't complete a certain level of your education, try to be honest about it. But most importantly, if you get called for an interview, make sure that you have resolved in your mind what you are going to do about it, especially if this is a particular educational route that is important to the career that you are pursuing. All right. So if you maybe don't come from a well-off financial family, and you had to stop a particular course because of financial constraints, and you really need a job now to resume, then be honest about that in your interview. You know, let the interviewer know, of course, without getting too personal and revealing too much personal details, because to some people their privacy is paramount as well. Be honest and speak about why you had to stop the particular course, and most importantly, what you plan to do about it moving forward. All right, Amanda?
Thanks, Corinne. You covered pretty much all the points. What I would like to add, though, especially with incomplete schooling, I know some persons might feel, if it's incomplete in terms that you're doing a degree and you had to fall out after the second year, or something like that, it is okay on your resume to include the degree that you started, and still have a spot where you indicate, you know,
In progress. Or...
yes, in progress, right? Because again, you can discuss that in detail at the interview. Remember, your resume is your points or the opening for an interview. right? You don't want to have too much information on there that will deter the employer from even wanting to speak or get to know about you some more. The issue on job hopping, though, I know that especially from the mouths of the older heads, they will look at young persons and the statement would be like, they're not loyal. They're not loyal to the company. You have to be mindful of that. When you are creating a career path for yourself, right? You're going to graduate with this degree and then you create a plan for what's your next step. I am going to get this job and stay in this job for a year or two, right? And this is going to take me to the next point. Please do not be hopping intentionally based on perceived better opportunities. You really have to have a plan in place because it really does weigh on your resume. So be mindful on that. Yeah, so those are just the things I wanted to add to what you said, Corey.
Great. Before we go into the question and answer segment, though, there is one point that I'd like to touch on very briefly. A lot of young people ask, let's say a company did not put on an ad, but I want to send my resume to that organization. Should I, and how do I? My advice to you and my response to that question is, of course you should. Organizations get what we call unsolicited resumes a lot of times. Sometimes it grabs our attention and sometimes it doesn't. And I can tell you the ones that do grab our attention are the ones that are addressed to us specifically. And by that, I mean, rather than just sending a resume to the HR department or to the organization's general mail, not knowing who will ever get it.
Yeah.
I suggest that you call the organization, speak to the receptionist, ask for a name of someone in the HR department, and address your resume to that person in the HR department. Get their email address, all right? And send it directly to that person. You stand a higher chance of having your resume read than just sending it to some random email account that maybe you came across.
Yeah.
All right. Another thing as well, when you're doing that, don't be afraid to market yourself for the particular area that maybe you want to work in. So if, for example, that you are seeking a career in, we speak about HSE in the HSE field, or maybe it's HR or finance, then there's nothing wrong with stating that in your cover letter as well. So at least if I'm looking at that unsolicited resume, I have an idea what this person's interest in. And on the odd chance that I do have an opportunity, I can consider it one time. And I will tell you that we have had a lot of vacancies filled through unsolicited resumes and through the ones that come across our emails, because I do look at them. And I am not at the stage where I do recruitment anymore, but if I get an email in my inbox, I will look at it. Depending on how busy I am, I may not get to it maybe for another 2 weeks, but I always look at it. And then I take it and I forward it to my HR teams saying, here's an entry-level clerical admin candidate, please consider for future opportunities. Or here's someone seeking an HR mid-level opportunity, please consider. All right? So you stand a better chance that way than just sending it in to any random person and without indicating what your chosen field of interest in. I just wanted to share that as my final point.
Thanks, guys. So I think you're ready to take a few questions. We do have a few.
Sure.
Thanks so much for your presentation today, by the way. As always, it's always very informative. And I myself, we always need a refresher. So I really do hope, and I'm sure that the students really appreciated the information that was presented today. So we just have a few questions. I think maybe Amanda, you can take the first one because I think you started the conversation on the objective and
Yeah.
the profile summary.
Mhm.
So the question is, on our resume, do we have to include both the objective statement and the profile summary?
Right. So thanks for that, Sabrina. It depends on your level. So if it is you are a graduate with no work experience, You probably have some volunteer experience, but the important thing is you're fresh out of university. I would say you use an objective statement only. However, the way how it is written, that is what makes the difference. So don't make it only about you and your wants of getting employment or your this is what skills you have. Tailor it in a way so that yes, you're looking for a position in, be specific in the position that you're looking for, right, when you're applying. So you will state that in the objective statement. You will state what you bring to the table. You have a bachelor's degree in XYZ, and you're looking forward to contribute your skills. You name one or two skills to the organization. So in that way, yes, your objective is to get a job, but you have tailored it in such a way it still represents your brand and it's not just about what you want. It's telling the employer something that they could use, right, to call you in for an interview.
Okay. I think perhaps I can ask Ms. Copeland to take this one. These two questions actually are a bit similar, so I'm going to read both of them. The first one says, or asks, what about including a photo with resumes? Is that a good idea or only if requested by an employer? And the other question is, it's a bit similar. Can you provide more details about the template, please? Also, is it recommended to attach a passport-sized picture in your resume? I've seen some resume templates asking for an image. Is this recommended?
Great, thank you. Okay, so when it comes to the photo, my advice for you is unless the employer has requested a photo, because there are some advertisements that do ask for a photo, unless it has been requested, do not provide it. And here is why. I will tell you. At the end of the day, and behind all the organizations are people sitting in HR departments, are line managers who are hiring for particular roles. And whether we want to admit it or not, there is such a thing as inherent biases. All right? People may look at your picture one time, depending on whether you smile, you don't smile, your hair combed properly, didn't comb properly, whatever it may be. And you don't know whether that will hamper your chance of being called for an interview. All right? So my advice to you is unless they have requested it, do not include it. It adds no benefit to you by including it. It's like stating what your marital status is or your religion is. Yeah. Nobody cares. It's not pertinent to what you can do. All right? When it comes to the format, I've seen a lot of formats. The formats that come.
Okay, right, yes. Amanda, do you want to take over from here? Thanks.
Yeah, of course, no problem. Just a little internet issues there. So again, just to enforce what Corinne was stating, only include a picture if you are asked. If you are not asked, it doesn't weigh on whether or not you can do the job, as she is stating. And you really want to protect yourself against that bias, that inherent bias that we all have, right? So I hope that answered the two, or addressed the two questions that you asked. And of course, if you want to follow up on it, you could mention more in the chat.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. We have another question. Can you speak more on the selection process for an interview? For example, after a resume goes into the I'll come back to that later pile, what goes into selecting that person for an interview?
All right, so basically there will be certain steps. Remember, at the first glance, employers, recruiters are looking for how well your resume match the job description. So they will have a unique grading system, right? Some companies do it manually. Some persons have what is called the ATS, right? Software that will basically track how well your resume match with the job description. After they do this, they will, right, and ask Corinne to weigh in after. After they do this, they will now assess absolute needs, like I want this, I want the person who we hire to have these, and screen from there. The next step will be to look at the person didn't have this, it was, but we could still consider what they do have. And this is the second batch. And they will look at that, call persons, screen persons accordingly. Yeah. But let me ask, because in terms of widespread recruiting, I'll ask Corinne to chime in there. The question was, Corinne, basically on the selection process, what is it that what determines or what criteria they use to screen candidates, who goes into the maybe pile and who goes into the different piles that you have?
Okay. In short, it has to do with your ability to sell yourself versus what I've asked for in the advertisement. So if in an advertisement, I've indicated that I'm looking for a candidate that has a minimum of 1 year work experience, that has at minimum a bachelor's degree in a particular field, and sometimes some ads state multiple fields or any related discipline, and I'm looking for certain competencies like the customer service, etc. We use those things to screen your CV against, which is why at the onset, we advised you about paying particular attention to the content of the ad, because that is what is used. Now, in screening, let's say 300 applications, we start with a general screen first, and which is why I say it really does take seconds. So if I go through that and I realize, okay, this person has 0 work experience, this person doesn't even have the degree that I've asked for, it will possibly go in the no thank you pile. All right. There have been instances though when recruiters have had to go back through a no thank you pile to screen again. And I'll tell you why, because having gone through hundreds of applications, sometimes you find a particular role extremely difficult to find an ideal candidate for. All right. And so you end up having to, in your mind, reduce your minimum requirements. So whilst I may have been looking for someone who had a bachelor's degree, I haven't gotten anybody that had the right mix of the bachelor's degree and the experience and the attributes. So let me go back through that pile and see if I at least can find someone who has maybe a diploma or a certificate. And so I go back through it. All right. So it really is no hard and fast, but you do stand a better chance tailoring your resume to sell yourself versus what the employer has asked you for via his advertisement, because the ad is really me asking you, this is what I want. I'm telling you that this is what I want. This is what I'm looking for in an ideal candidate. It's up to you via your resume to tell me, okay, this is what I have in relation to what you want. And here's why I think I am a good candidate for your role.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, thanks for that. I don't know who would like to take this one. The question is, what are some of the social media areas that we can go on to see jobs and volunteer opportunities?
Okay. Go ahead, Amanda, sorry.
I will definitely state the same. Facebook have a lot of opportunities there. We tend to think that it's just for recreational purposes, but you will see a lot of companies with their Facebook pages posting job opportunities. They're posting internship, volunteer, etc. But as young graduates, I encourage you guys, please create a LinkedIn account. LinkedIn is the future of that professional digital footprint that you really need to harness from now, right? You would see, you could mirror or job shadow someone who you admire. Yeah, the possibility. And don't be a stranger. Don't create an account just to look for opportunities and look at other persons. Just try your best to reach out to persons, comments, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, I would add to that as well. Apart from just Facebook and LinkedIn, I encourage you guys to browse certain websites, because employers still use websites, career websites and job websites to post ads. Caribbean Jobs is a popular one. Jobs TT is a popular one that is designed to the local market in particular. But I can't underscore what Amanda said about LinkedIn. I mean, it really is where we do our own headhunting. I mean, I can tell you just this past week, because I do have a senior HR role that I'm recruiting for, and I've not posted an ad online. I've not gone to a headhunter. I'm doing my own headhunting. So I've spent weekends and early mornings scouring through HR professionals' profiles on LinkedIn and messaging people to find out whether they're interested in my opportunity. And I'm doing that myself. So it really is the in thing, as we like to say, because it's more cost effective now, especially as organizations are concerned about cost. I don't have to pay a headhunter. I don't have to pay for an ad, which runs into thousands. You all cannot imagine how costly ads are. And I don't have to pay to post something online, right? The job market is out there. There are hundreds of people looking for jobs. So all you need to do is make yourself accessible and put your information out there for me to be able to find it.
Thanks, Corinne. I just wanted to throw in something there with respect to job and volunteer opportunities. One of the reasons why we want to insist that you register for World of Work is because you are going to be placed on our final year student database, and we will be we have access to some of that information as well. So you can contact us. I mean, the name of our department is Careers, Co-Curricular and Community Engagement. So we will be able to provide information for you with respect to volunteer activities, because that's what we do, about available jobs, because that's what we do. So once you are on that database, and to get on that database, you need to register, and so that's why we keep telling you, look out for the ads, for the notices with respect to registration and everything else that's happening, because once you are on that database, we will use that database to advertise any jobs that are out there and even volunteer activities. Okay, so make sure and keep checking for all of that information as well. Thanks.
And Sabrina, I can also add as well, organizations do come to tertiary institutions like UWI asking for a listing of final graduates for placement as well. So we do use your schools as recruitment sources to find persons to fill roles. So that's very, very important.
Thanks, Corinne, for putting that in. There's another question regarding internships. So I'm not sure if you want to take this one as well. When doing internships while in school, like during breaks, would it be more appealing to have the same firm for internship for a long period of time, or would it be better to intern at a different firm or at different firms?
Okay, so internships are a good way for you to get experience. No prospective employer will expect that you intern at the same firm every time you get an opportunity to intern. Yeah. No employer would expect that. It's actually beneficial to you to try a different experience. So let's say you got a 2 months now, and then next year you have to intern, try another organization, because what that does is exposes you to a different organization's culture, which means a different way of doing things. It may be an entirely different role, or even if it's a similar role, the fact that you're working in a different environment adds something to you that you would not have had before. So my personal advice to you is to go for the different experience, but certainly from a recruiter standpoint, we don't expect that you would intern at the same company over and over and over. As a matter of fact, when we see that, we may ask ourselves, I wonder if this is a family firm, because it's unusual, all right?
Okay, thanks very much. I don't know if Amanda would want to take this one. Or it doesn't matter. It says, this is about a cover letter. So during the period after completing all degree courses and receiving actual degree completion status, how should you word a cover letter? For example, should you say you earned a BSc at this point? Because I know that I can go against the truthful aspect. Or should you say you're still a student? So I guess we could address the fact, should we or should we not do a cover letter?
I will go first and ask Corinne to chime in after. For the cover letter as a graduate, let's say graduation is in October, right? And you're writing this application letter, this cover letter in May, June, whatnot. It's okay to state in your cover letter that you have pursued or completed the research or the academic part of your degree, right, due to graduate at and the time of graduation. Because this still gives the information that you have completed your studies, the hardcore studies, and you're still waiting to get that tangible certificate. Yeah, so it's okay to state that. Now, on the matter of doing a cover letter, my thoughts on it personally, again, if it is the job requested, the job advertisement, the advertisement requested cover letter and resume, then of course you do a cover letter. And in it, you will just, provide a small note on what you studied. You could perhaps put in some of the courses that you studied and what you learned from them. You could talk about, of course, you would have to work in teams for your degree, right? At some point in time, you could talk about UK in teamwork. You learn how to perform well in teams, and you were able to mediate different discussions, things like that you could have in your cover letter. But of course, my personal take on it, if it is the ad does not state or requires a cover letter, you do not necessarily need to send in one. And at this point, I'll ask Corinne to weigh in on her thoughts on that as well.
No, Amanda, actually, I have the same thought. You can, in fact, indicate that you have completed all the academic requirements for a particular course of study and due to graduate. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I am neither for nor against the cover letter, to be honest. Some advertisements ask for it, some advertisements don't ask for it. It certainly wouldn't take away from you if you send one. What may happen is that sometimes a recruiter doesn't look at it. I can tell you that. But there's nothing wrong with sending a cover letter. If you do in fact send one, then you have to consider that it will be read. And so make sure that you craft it to sell yourself, and consider it a summary of you, consider it a summary of what you have to offer, consider it your elevator pitch. That's what I like to call it, because really and truly, it's the precursor to your resume. So when the person reads that, they need to be more interested in you to turn the page or to scroll down and go to the next page to actually see your resume. That's what I would add to that.
Okay, thanks very much, Corinne. I think I have two here, which I think you could take. One, because I think you started the conversation on branding statement, I think. Can you go over where we should place the name and contact, please? I'm a bit confused. And I'm a bit confused about the branding statement. And also, this is just a general question, and for everybody else as well, how would one become a volunteer for HUMAT?
Okay,
So
great.
the first one, again, about where I'm confused about the branding statement, and can you go over where we should place the name and contact?
Okay, so I would let Amanda take the one about the branding statement, because that was actually hers.
Okay.
In terms of the name and contact, you can place it on the first page as part of your header, or I've seen templates where people put it at the side. So there is like a column at the side where they place their pertinent information, or you can put your name at the top and put all your contact information maybe at the footer on every page. Any of those are acceptable.
Yeah. And for the branding statement, remember I said it's something that, especially as a graduate, because you have not acquired the amount of work experience to say that you are an HSE professional or something to that regard, you can say aspiring and then you put the title there, what you're aspiring to do. Or you can put a title and put apprentice to the end, right? You're willing to learn. So this statement is just to sort of brand you. Some persons could simply put, and this is when you get your degree and whatnot, you will see their name and they just put their degree underneath, right? That constitutes as a branding statement as well. So right away, the employer sees what is your specialty, what's your background. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we'll Corinne in terms of the volunteering.
Humat, yeah, sure. Just to add to the branding statement, consider it part of your introduction. So very often it comes right after the name, as Amanda said. So your name goes to the top or wherever you decide to put your name, and the branding statement right after or to the side of it. In terms of volunteering for Humat, you can send an email to manager@humat.com. That email is manned by an admin, and express your interest in volunteering. Humat has several committees. There's a public relations committee. There is a youth action committee. There is training and development. There are editorial committees, several opportunities where you can lend your skills or develop your skills. From time to time, Humat puts on conferences and puts out a call for volunteers as well. And that is usually done via social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever the platform. And so you submit your interest via that platform. So whenever you see calls for volunteers, and a lot of other professional associations also do the same. So I know there is the ICAT Association, Institute of Chartered Accountants, there's the IT Association, Professional Engineers Association. Find out about your professional association, get a contact info, and submit your interest in terms of volunteering for whatever area. I mean, at the end of it, the benefit is tremendous. You build your skills, but you also build your network. And those are the same people that can recommend you for jobs in the future. So I really, really encourage it.
Okay, thanks very much. I have another question here. Do you guys have about 5 or 10 minutes again to answer a few
Yeah.
more questions? Is
Yeah,
that
sure,
okay?
sure.
No
Okay,
problem.
thanks. How do you present hard and soft skills in a resume in terms of wording, but before receiving actual degree completion status?
I will start. Now, even before you gain your degree, you would have been, you know, harnessing skills. So let me give an example of a hard skill. For your research paper, have you used SPSS? Have you used NVivo, any type of data collection and analysis software? That's a hard skill. You can include that. Have you used any sort of graphic design software, Photoshop, Canva? That's a hard skill. It's something that you would have had to learn, right? And now you have a measure of expertise in it. Your soft skill, as I mentioned before, are things that are more natural to you. It will include, how you perform and how you operate in teams, how you communicate, your ability to manage projects well, to lead teams, you
To
would
relate to persons.
to relate to persons, correct, yeah. And of course, all of these things. As a graduate, guys, I know that it would seem that because you don't have work experience, you don't have your resume is going to be lacking. It's not lacking because you have already been practicing throughout your 3 or 4 years. You have been practicing, you have been gaining skills. And so it's important to put it in there because these are remember, Corinne talk about transferable skills. This will follow you throughout your entire career. It creates that benchmark. Yeah. So, well, Corinne, I don't know if you need to weigh in on.
No, nothing else I want to add there. But as you were speaking, though, one of the things that popped into my mind, I know we spoke a lot about professional associations and volunteering in school, but there are other opportunities for you to volunteer and develop those skills as well. And I can think of a common one. I mean, a lot of people get involved in community projects or even their churches and organizing events for church. That's a really great opportunity for you to build those soft skills in particular. Because
Yeah.
when you're working on church projects, let's say you're putting on a play or some Christmas concert for church, you build your team working skills because you typically have to work as part of a team. You may be assigned a particular role as part of that team. You build your organizational skills. There are a lot of opportunities, and that's why the volunteering really is. I mean, I can't underscore the importance of it. It really is helpful to you as up and coming professionals.
I'm seeing more than one question about recruitment agencies and would you
Mhm.
recommend them? Are they advisable? And what are some advisable recruitment agencies that can be looked at?
Yes, I do recommend them, and here's why. There are some organizations who only recruit through recruitment agencies. Um, it all depends. I mean, there are some organizations who only use certain recruitment agencies, but again, it will not hamper your chance. At the end of the day, that is just another avenue for you to get your resume out there. And I encourage you to take advantage of it. I mean, when I was putting myself out into the world of work, I submitted my resume to every recruitment agency I knew about. Some of them took it for free. Some of them charged me a $50 fee. It didn't matter. I paid because that was a way for me to get myself out there and to increase my chance of getting an opportunity. And there was one particular instance where I landed an opportunity that was never advertised because that particular employer went directly to the recruitment firm to get their HR resource. All right. So I do encourage you. Um, I'm not making a plug for any, but I'm just telling you off the top of my head some that I do know. There is Eve Anderson. There is Recruitment Experts. There is Progressive Recruitment Consultants. I think that's the name. There is HRC, Holic Recruitment. I'm not sure what the C stands for, but there's HRC. Um, who else? Those are the common ones that certainly I know. There is Fullcroft. Not a lot of people know about that one. So they are out there, but I can certainly tell you, I mean, I remember back in that day, I went through the yellow pages. I mean, I know people don't use telephone directories anymore, but they're still quite resourceful. And so is the internet. I mean, type in a search on local recruitment agencies, and I'm sure you would get a list.
Yeah.
My advice to you, therefore, is to just be resourceful and get the information that you need. Don't be afraid to call the recruitment firm and find out about the application process or the registration process and get yourself registered.
Yeah. I will just add in there too. My experience, similarly to you, Corinne, I sent out my resume and registered with almost all recruitment agencies in the country. I will tell you one benefit though. It may not be immediately, as in, the wait time could be a bit long, because of
Yeah.
course it depends on if it is they are presented with a vacancy in your field. But
Mhm.
what really stood out for me when I went to, I believe it was recruitment experts, and this is years ago, I they assessed me. And in that assessment, I realized I had a lot of work to do in terms of Microsoft Excel. So remember, they're doing a basic, assessment to see how fast you are with the computer and whatnot. And because I never use Excel as much, certain things, and it it was like a refresher for me and
Mhm.
an eye opener that I need to step up my game on that. So it really didn't, it never hurt. I got called for a job opportunity some months, probably like a year after. And at the time, I already had a job. But the point is, they help and they could help prepare you. Some of them have useful resources. Some of them would have, workshops and seminars and whatnot to help
Mhm.
you. So I will put a plug in for them as well.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. Maybe I can ask you if you would be able to take these questions. Should one include their address or general location, I guess, in the resume? And when sending a resume through email, what can be written in the body of the actual email?
Right. For the address, I had my address on my resume for many years, and it's only, to be quite honest, recently I said to myself, I don't want to have that on the resume for two reasons. One, there's something called geographic discrimination. And what it simply means is if a recruiter or whoever is screening your resume see that you are from a certain area, may it be a remote area, may it be a a stereotypical hotspot area, that's without even looking at what you can do and provide the company, that could deter them from moving forward with your screening. So I tell my clients all the time to omit the address, because guess what? When they call you and if you're interviewed, you will have to provide that information, and you will have that face-to-face opportunity to, at least state certain things, such as if you're living a good distance, how it is you intend to reach to work on time, etc. Well, now we're in an environment that we are working remotely in most cases. But my thing, do not include your address. Email address and phone number is fine, and that's all they need to contact you. In terms of the, what was the second question? Remind me, please, again, Sabrina.
If you're sending your resume
Email,
through an
email.
email, what
Yes,
do
I
you put in the
remember.
body of the
In the
email
body.
itself?
Thanks. So most people will, of course, they'll have their resume and cover letter attached. And in the body of the email, all you really need to state is you are applying for, you state the position, and please see your letter and then resume attached. It is nothing too long, because you don't want that to be the first introduction, more or less. And yes, it is the first introduction, but you want it to be short enough to encourage them to go open your cover letter and your resume, right? So just to the point, of course, your subject line is the vacancy. So the name of the vacancy, application for XYZ vacancy, right? And then their hiring manager, that's if you don't know who you're writing to, as in their name. Please see my application and my resume attached for this position, etc. Short, nothing, it's not too much of a science to it. Yeah, you're not writing a blog um, on your email application.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. Maybe I can ask you there are two questions that are quite similar.
Mhm.
First one, I've seen many entry-level jobs asking for 1 to 2 years experience. Should I submit my resume anyway? And the other one is very similar. There are many companies asking for 5 and 10 years experience. Should we ignore that requirement and simply apply? I remember you mentioned that in a previous workshop.
Yeah,
That's a
definitely.
popular question.
It is a popular question. Um, Remember, guys, that these are wants, these are their wants. However, it would not hurt to apply. And it's simply because they could bypass the amount of years you have, the experience you have, and look more so as your skills and your capabilities, um, and the little experience, how you applied your experience. So yes, they will have a certain amount of years as a requirement, but it is not, to me, it is done almost to screen. It's just like for screening purposes, but it should not deter you, especially if you look at the other areas of the job advertisement and you see that you fit it, or you're a close fit. Yeah. And so I'll ask Corinne too. Corinne, the question was, for entry level, what is it? Should you still apply when jobs ask for 1 to 2 or even up to 5 years experience as an entry level candidate? Should you still apply?
I tell people straight up, I mean, it's like the lotto. They say you don't have a ticket, you don't have a chance. I take the similar approach with jobs. Because remember what I said, I mean, sometimes recruiters do have to reduce their entry requirements when they realize that they're not getting ideally what they're looking for. And in most instances, they don't put back out that ad again. They go through the applications that they already have. So adopt that mindset. And especially when you don't have the experience, make sure and try to sell your skills. And I come back again to the transferable skills and show why you can be an asset, notwithstanding that you don't necessarily meet the minimum experience requirements, but straight up still apply.
Okay, thanks very much. Seeing a question here about LinkedIn. So I'm not sure if these two questions are separate, but I'm not sure if they're from the same person. With regards to LinkedIn, how can you screen whether an opportunity is legitimate or not? And then there's another question right after that that says, would that recruitment be only for nationals?
Okay, so a lot of employers do put advertisements out via LinkedIn. If you are suspicious and you don't think that it is a genuine opportunity, you can pay close attention to it. I mean, most times there is an email address, or call the company and find out, verify if they indicated a person to contact, call the organization and speak to that person and find out. Again, I say be resourceful. I mean, you do see jobs being posted, one, from employers' LinkedIn pages, because a lot of employers do have LinkedIn pages, and those are more than not often, those are very often very genuine. Employers don't go about creating false pages to trick unsuspecting candidates, all right? And even without that, some employers may not have their pages, but their HR persons may post jobs on behalf of the organization. So those are the ones where you may see a regular Jane Doe with an HR professional title posting a job, and you might become a little suspicious. Message the person or call the organization itself and just verify through the HR department whether or not this particular job does in fact exist, if you don't feel comfortable just applying just like that. Yeah, but there are ways to find out.
So we're almost finished, I think. There's actually a question about, maybe I could put these two together. Are internships considered working experience? And how do you feel about, or if there's a student who works for their parents, does that count as work experience? And can you mention that specifically, that in your resume, that your employer is your family? So can you work as with your parents in a business, if that is work experience, and are internships considered working experience?
Yes and yes. So yes, internships are considered work experience. And why not? I mean, if you are fortunate enough to be in a family that owns a business, why not take advantage of that? You can indicate the name of the organization on your resume. I see no reason for you to state that it's a family business. Certainly when you get called for an interview, this is part of the intrigue as well, that I tell people you don't have to provide all that detail. When you get called for an interview and they ask you about the organization, at that point you can divulge that this is a family business and what your role in the business was, et cetera, et cetera. But by all means, a lot of persons aren't that fortunate and they have to fight up in the market to get such opportunities. So if you are so fortunate, take advantage of it and do work in the family business and get as much exposure as you possibly can. Amanda, you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yes to both, because the family business, you have to remember, you're still learning, you're still practicing, you're still, gaining so much skills and interacting. So what I will add though, it's important that you at least, if it is you have no title in your family business, you need to put a title to what it is you're doing. So based on the tasks, based on the things that you do every day, how you assist, put a title to it on your resume. And of course, at the interview, it's if it comes up, it's okay to mention it's a family business, because at that point, you have already intrigued the employers more, right? And have that opportunity to explain. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. So we're going to be wrapping up soon, guys. So make sure if you have any more questions, please send it in really quickly. And in the meantime, I am seeing a question about preparing tips on preparing for the interview. So again, just to remind you, yeah, we're going to be doing that very soon. And surprise, surprise, Humat is going to be on board very soon with tips on preparing for an interview, how to dress for success, male and female. So, again, you need to register, check the Facebook page, check your email address. We're going to launch a website soon. You're going to see all that information on the website. You're going to see when those are coming up actually next. Okay, so Dress for Success is coming up soon, and then preparing for an interview will be coming up after. We're going to be joined by Humat again, and they are going to be presenting those workshops. So yeah, we have a lot more to come. Someone asked what other types of opportunities do World of Work offer. You can get information on mock interviews and have an opportunity to do a mock interview and interview tips and things like that. But I don't want to give away everything right now because we want you to register. Check your Facebook page, look on the website, and you're going to see everything that you need to know. And of course, you can contact us via email and we will give you all that information. But the answer generally is yes, we do have other opportunities. We do I mean, we don't know how the job market is going to be right now, but once you register, once you participate in all your programs, we're going to provide you with the skills with an opportunity to get a job. If, as Ms. Copeland said, companies, we have a lot of stakeholders, a lot of companies that we work with who actually contact us for our graduates. So once that information gets to us, we will then send it to you, and so, yeah, that's why we always tell you register, register, register. Um, Let me just check one time to see if I missed any other questions. Recruitment only for nationals, not necessarily. I mean, as I said again, we don't know how the job market is going to be. We do get um, offers for students from other countries, but it is difficult to say at this time. If we do get that information, we will share it to you by our Facebook page. Okay. There's one question I missed. I don't know who would like to take this one about how many references should you include in your resume, and yeah, what number would be appropriate.
I can take that one very quickly. If you decide to include references on your resume, 2 is acceptable. I've seen 3, which is also acceptable, but please no more than that.
Yeah.
Anything longer than that, it kind of becomes a directory.
Yes.
So 2 to 3 persons. And make sure that you include the name, the designation of the person. If you are aware of it, find out that person's email contact and telephone contact for that person as well. If you know the organization, you could always stick that in there as well.
Okay, thanks very much. Amanda, do you or Corinne have any final tips before we wrap up?
I just want to summarize. I mean, because I've been where you guys are in terms of, pursuing educational studies and deciding which career field that I want to venture into and wondering what next, how do I put myself out there? These workshops that UWI is putting on for you guys are tremendously beneficial. I didn't have those opportunities back in the day when I was going through my process. So I want to encourage you guys to take advantage of it, register for all of them, practice what you are hearing, use that information, go back through your CV, make sure it's up to standard, make sure you find ways to distinguish yourself and set yourself apart from everybody else, because remember, the job market is quite tight. Um, But I mean, as well, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to take advantage of opportunities that you see. Because I mean, there were questions on whether I should apply or should not apply. Believe in yourself, dig within yourself and find those skills and experiences that you do have, which may not always be professional, but you do have it. I mean, we're all walking on this face of the earth and we're doing things and we think that they don't count, but they do count. So find ways to translate those into the skills that you need to market yourself for the world of work. And other than that, I mean, good luck and all the best.
Definitely. I think that you really have to do that self-assessment. It's very important to really look into what it is you have to offer. Who do you want to serve? Where do you want to work? The industry, all these things that, consider that before you even begin to craft your resume so that you would be able to send applications to companies that you see yourself being a good fit to instead of just sending out several, in hope for a response. Yeah. And you don't want to create that type of stress when it is you're not getting called. You don't want to create that for yourself. So do the self-assessment, treat your resume as your brand because guess what it is. Take pride in it. Yeah. And of course, continue learning, continue seeking out opportunities, these workshops, these webinars, World of Work putting on for you. Take full advantage of it and be wary of your digital footprint. If I say anything else, your digital footprint. Yeah, that will be my piece.
Thanks, Amanda. And you actually hinted on another workshop that will be coming up soon. So, guys, I just want to say thanks so much. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks to Corinne for the information that you gave us today. It was really, really, really informative. Thanks very, very much, everybody, for today's session. And I hope that it was very beneficial. And be safe out there, too.